Hey everyone, it's with a heavy heart that I want to talk about talk, talk about this thing. I'm probably going to get called anti-Semitic and all of that bullshit that goes around with all of that nonsense. But you know, I find it disturbing that not very many people are talking about this when they should be screaming at the top of their lungs. And I'm talking about the situation in Gaza. I've talked about it before, but I think it's more urgently now, since the world is so sick of hearing about it that we're trying to tune it out of our daily lives, and that's because we're not exposed to it, and nobody psychologically wants to keep themselves occupied with things that are negative or things that are very disturbing. It's just our human nature is that way. But the thing that we should also understand is that our combined human nature is what runs the world. And when the majority of us stay silent because it's inconvenient to speak out, that's when the demons of this world are having a field day, as they are in Gaza right now. Netanyahu, who is a complete piece of shit, along with all of those right-wing numbnuts around him, these people are 100 times worse than Hitler ever was. People will have an issue with that, me saying that, but the ironic thing is that the people in this world, or a group of people in this world that should be so sensitive to genocide, exterminations, concentration camps, should be the Jewish people. And here we are. The combined effort of the world granted them a homeland. And it seems like, we've been feeding a cancer cell since 1948 at the cost of the poor Palestinians who opened their arms to welcoming these guys initially, and then only to be confronted with 75 years of extermination and prosecution and apartheid and whatever the hell you want to call it. The bottom line is that they're stealing these people's land, they're killing women and children, and they're doing it indiscriminately. And the sad part of it is that the Western politicians, and when I speak specifically about the United States, both the Democrats and the Republicans have been completely infiltrated by the AIPAC lobby. And I want to be very clear here. The Jewish people are not the problem. It's a fraction within the Jewish people called the Zionists that are the problem. These people have no place on this world because they don't care about anybody else. They don't give a shit. They talk really sweet to the Americans, who is basically a Christian society, and then they bomb the shit out of a Christian church. And they are completely harassing Christians that go to Jerusalem as their so-called holy place. It is just laughable how gullible these people are. Just statistics-wise, and you can research this if you wish to, the last year, more people have left the Christian faith in disgust of their pastors and priests supporting the Jewish state. You go figure that out. But it tells you that there's at least a lot of conscious people in this world that see it for what it is. And this is terrible. It's just got to stop. What this numbnut doesn't understand, that he's making life extremely difficult for Jewish people living all over the world. Because people get angry, people develop a hatred inside. And since they can't technically reach out in Israel and start shooting the IDF or causing pain on the other side, they're lashing out to the people in their communities, which is terrible. So he doesn't understand that. Netanyahu never gave a shit about his hostages. You know, if you know that your hostages are being held in so-called tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip, and you are annihilating the Gaza Strip by bombing the shit out of it, that means that you don't really care about those people. You stop food from going into the Gaza Strip because you want to starve and exterminate the Palestinians, but those same hostages also have to eat from the same food. So you're killing them as well. Go figure that logic out. I tell you. You know, coming from an intel background, you know, the Mossad, which was basically the Israeli Secret Service, they knew 1 year ahead of time that October 7th was going to happen. And they let it happen. Let that sink in. They let it happen. You know why? Because this was their plan all along. You know, instead of killing, 2, 3, 5 people a week, now you can kill 100 a day. So it is all about taking these people's land. It has nothing to do with all of that other fluff that they are letting you to believe. And you know the sad part of it is the American people, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, you're an idiot. You know why? Because you're giving these guys every year billions and billions of dollars. They have basically free education in Israel. They have free medical care in Israel. You know why? Because you're giving them the money to be able to do that. And in your own country, you don't have any of that. Hey, speaking about getting a blowjob, oh boy, I tell you, that's just unbelievable. The thing is, we need to put pressure on our politicians to reverse this support. There should be a separate Palestinian state, and I don't care if there is an Israeli state. Let them be to their own thing. If the Americans want to be stupid and be, whatever, to keep giving them money, well, that's their problem. Their empire is in a collapsing mode as it is anyway. So, they'll wake up one day and figure out that they've been snowed. So, but for the rest of us, we have to do something about this because, doing nothing is being complicit. And I am not going to be complicit in having women and children murdered while I'm watching this. I'm sorry, but that's not who I am. It takes just as much effort to be evil as it is to be good. And I choose to be good because I like to sleep at night. Anyway, that's my say right now. And I sure hope as hell that you guys do something about it. Again, this has nothing to do with the Jewish people. I have family that are Jewish. We don't prescribe to Zionism. We don't want nothing to do with them. These people are evil. They're pretending to be Jews, and the land it belongs to them, and they're the chosen people. But where the hell did they come from? They all come from Northern Eastern Europe. None of them have any affiliation with the land that they claim to be theirs. It's like me all of a sudden moving to China and say, listen, this is, this land has been promised to me and you guys need to kind of move, That is absurd. The 20th century and or 21st century we are now. And we're dealing with this crap? Remember, Netanyahu has nothing, there's no noble cause for this idiot. He's a convicted war criminal. The only way that he can stay in power and not be jailed is to keep doing what he's doing. But like any elastic, eventually you can't stretch it anymore, and then it snaps. And that will come soon enough. But until then, there will be thousands and thousands more that will have to die. I watched a video this morning about poor Palestinian guy sitting on the seaside, hungry, broken, relaxing, and some fucking sniper shoots him from the back, kills him instantly. This is just incredible. doctor's testimony. I'm not making any of this stuff up. This is all very, very verifiable if you do a little bit of research. Doctors said they couldn't put their hands over a poor child's heart any better than the sniper bullet that went through. What purpose is there to shoot a child? Is he a terrorist? Of course not. Why do you have to kill them? You know why they're killing them? Because they believe in their draconian, twisted religion that anything is game. If you exterminate the children, if you exterminate the animals and the women, they can no longer make new children and they can no longer have a continuation. And that's what these people are doing. They are doing this on purpose. Please speak out and see if we can at least help somehow to stop this. The UN is crying and yelling at us to support. The only way you're going to support is by having your pressure on your politicians to do so. Because otherwise, I'm sorry, we're going to continue to watch this horror movie. Anyway, that's my say for today. God bless.